Welcome back to another episode of Better Than I Found It, the podcast, all things college golf. You're listening to Mike McGraw, the men's golf coach at Baylor University. Today's guest on Better Than I Found It is longtime PGA Tour player and current associate head coach at the University of Florida, Dudley Hart. Dudley and I talk about his father, a PGA club professional, and his father's influence on his development as a player. We also discuss his iconic college coach at Florida, Buddy Alexander. Dudley recalls a heartbreaking runner-up finish to Arizona State in 1990, his last college tournament. He also shares his philosophies on both playing and coaching. This information is valuable and insightful. I hope you enjoy. Okay, Better Than I Found It faithful. It's time to welcome my newest guest, former PGA Tour player and current Florida associate head coach, Dudley Hart, to the podcast. Dudley, really appreciate you joining me right here in the middle of the season.
Honored to be with you, Mike. Thanks for thinking about me and offering me to come on.
Absolutely. Well, I think I talked to you about this a while back and just we hadn't gotten around to doing it. And then we got paired together in the first round at Olympia Fields last week. Golly, what a golf course, man. That place is so nice.
Yeah.
And we got to play it in good weather, which is pretty awesome too.
Yep.
So, but anyway, we got a lot to cover here today, from everything from your playing days at Florida to winning on the PGA Tour to now your current position of coaching at your alma mater. But before we do that, I know nothing about your golf background before you got to Florida. So I want to know your earliest influences. I really am always interested, whether it's a coach or a player, how you got started in the game. Who were the biggest influences?
Well, without a doubt, my biggest influence was my father, Chuck Hart. My dad was a golf pro, longtime golf pro. I grew up in Western New York. He was a pro at a club called Wanaka Country Club up there, and kind of some of my first earliest memories of playing golf were at Wanaka. I remember they had a great junior program, so there were always a lot of kids that kind of hang around and play golf which I think helps a lot, especially at a young age. It's, golf can be a fairly solitary game sometimes. And when you're 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, not all kids love to go out there and just sit there by themselves for 2 or 3 hours practicing and playing and messing around. So it was great to have other kids involved. And my dad was really big with the junior golf program there, encouraging it and giving us tons of access to the practice facilities and golf course and whatnot. So I would have never got into golf without my dad. He did encourage me to play a lot of other sports. So I really didn't start playing competitive tournaments outside of, like, in the summer, they had a interclub program up in Western New York, where on Mondays you'd have a junior team, which is 14 and under, and 15 to 18 would be the boys team. And you would go to a different golf course and play a little one-day tournament there. And the highlight was having cheeseburgers and ice cream after those rounds. So it was pretty low key, but it was fun. And it introduced me to a little bit of competitive golf. But I grew up playing a lot of hockey. I played hockey probably 6-7 months of the year, especially in Buffalo, New York. You're not playing golf all year round, obviously. So he really encouraged me to play other sports, baseball, soccer, and hockey. And he got a job at a private club down on Miami Beach called Lagorce, right when I was starting high school. So I moved down there, and that ended my hockey career, which was probably good. And then we lived on the 10th hole of Lagorce Country Club, and I literally had a dream scenario for a kid who got addicted to golf. I came home from school. We had a golf cart in our backyard. My clubs almost never came off the golf cart. I'd change in the golf clothes and I'd go out and practice and play and mess around. And we didn't have a lot of kids at the club, but at a club like that, especially back then. But I fortunately, I got addicted to the game, and I was so lucky to have a dad who was a good player, played in some US Opens and some PGAs as a club pro, really, really competitive. And just to have that instruction and that knowledge and some of the things that he taught me that I think are starting to become a little bit of lost art nowadays. Not to sound like an old fuddy-duddy, but he taught me one of the most important things was the value of having a go-to shot when you're not feeling good. And I just, in the little time that I've been doing this stuff at the college level, there aren't a lot of kids that have that. And, we, just because he knew you're not going to feel great a lot of times, or you're going to get on a hole and the wind switches, and one day it might not be an uncomfortable tee shot. The next day it might be, for whatever your pattern is or whatever your eye likes to see. And if you have a shot that you can trust, that can get it in play and keep you in the tournament, or especially when you're playing bad. He just always say, man, when you're off, you can't just go fire a 76 or 78 and shoot yourself out of a tournament. You got to have a way to get it around, and things like that. And work ethic, he was really big on. Never pushed me in golf, really. I was super lucky with that. But he was one of those dads where if and when I got a little bit lazy with my practice, he would never tell me, why aren't you practicing? He would just start putting me to work. So I'd go work in the bag room, I'd be picking the range, and then eventually I'd kind of figure it out. I'm like, okay, I'll start practicing. He said, you're either going to work on your golf, or you're going to work, and do something around the club. So and he just instilled a really strong work ethic in me, which is probably probably maybe one of the few solid traits that I have as a player and a coach. And I don't know that I was the most talented person on the planet, but I was a grinder, and a lot of that I owe to my dad.
Well, you said a lot there and good stuff, but one, hockey players make good golfers. I'm just telling you, a ton of really good players on the tour have been hockey players growing up. So that's great. I love the fact you grew up in a northern climate, but still developed a golf game.
Yep.
I was the son of a golf professional. My dad was a lifetime member of the PGA.
Yep.
So I know the exact childhood you had. I understand growing up at a golf course, which is amazing. We lived on the golf course as well.
Really? Great.
So yeah, it's all the same stuff. But you mentioned a go-to shot. It's shocking how many really good junior players come on our campus and you're going, wait, you have no idea what to do when you're feeling terrible. I mean, Randy Smith has given Scotty Scheffler the greatest little white bleeder cut off the tee that gets in play.
Yeah, I've gotten into it a little bit with a couple of our players. Ricky Castillo, one of them. My first fall working as an assistant, he was struggling with his driver, and just a little stubborn. And Ricky, part of what makes him a great player is that he has a strong belief in what he's doing, which is important. But we were playing a practice round at Isleworth, which is relatively tight golf course, and he's hitting some good drives, but he's bouncing them off a couple of roofs here and there in a practice round. And he's a competitive kid, and he's getting pissed. And all of a sudden he hits this just rocket stinger, like 30 feet off the ground on a rope. And he kind of turned to me. I turned to him and I said, Ricky, why are you not using that shot more often? He goes, Dudley, that's a Band-Aid. I don't want to play golf with a Band-Aid. And I looked at him, and maybe not in these such kind words, but I said, well, I played half of my effing career with a Band-Aid. It felt like, at least. I'm like, and that Band-Aid made me a lot of money when I probably would have missed the cut if I didn't have it. So, I think it's invaluable. That's one of the things we talk to our guys, constantly about, is trying to develop a shot that you can trust. And it doesn't mean that you're being a wuss or you're being negative. It's just being a realist, saying, I don't like this tee shot. How can I get around it and make sure this hole doesn't kill me? So, or
you can either not like that tee shot and hit a block right out of bounds, or you can hit the little bleeder or whatever it is and in play. It's your choice.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Well, so your dad was smart. That was pretty much ahead of his time as far as what instructors would do. I know that more of them are doing it today, but we still get kids on our campus that don't do it. So your dad was your early influence. That was my dad as well, and got me into the game. But recruiting, I know, looks a lot different today than it did when you were being recruited in the 1980s. So talk to me about that. I know you ran into Buddy Alexander before he got to Florida.
Yeah.
Talk about that recruiting process and go from there.
Yeah, so it was very different, obviously. Most of the stuff was, mail, correspondence, and obviously phone calls, but we didn't have cell phones. So it was leaving messages on our home voicemail, and me calling coaches back if I missed them, which I wasn't in the house very often except at night. And it was different. It wasn't probably, I feel like the cell phones, and it probably makes me a little bit of a weaker coach, because I really worry about calling and texting kids all the time and being a pain, because I know they're getting it from everybody. So I probably need to get better at that part in my job. But they've got it a lot harder now than I did then. But I got recruited. I was lucky by the time after my junior year, after the summer before my senior year of high school, I had a really good summer. I ended up being ranked the #1 junior in the country. So it kind of gave me an opportunity to pick and choose where I wanted to go. So I went on my 5 visits. I grew up a Florida fan. My dad went to Florida 100 years ago, and so that was my dream school. But my dad was, adamant that I had to go make sure that was the right fit. He didn't, he wanted to make sure I wasn't doing it for him or that I just did it because I love Florida. Make sure it's the right fit. The coaches are right, the facilities, everything that you might be looking for. And so anyway, I visited Oklahoma State, LSU, Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida. And Okie State was by far the best program in the country at that stage. They had Scott Verplank, EJ Pfister, who was a fellow Buffalo guy who was there,
Yep.
was like my hero growing up as a junior player, and had a lot of really good friends on that team. It was, I went on a visit out there, and it was just so different than Miami Beach. The weather in the fall was cold, and I remember we got out there and they were playing Oak Tree, and the wind was blowing out of the north, and it was like impossible. They could hardly reach some fairways. The golf course was so hard, and Scott Verplank, who had to be one of the best amateur players and college players that ever lived, that I can remember at least. And he shoots 69 that day, and the next lowest score was 79. I think there was one of them. And this team was the best team in the country. And I remember going, holy crap, I don't know if I want to go play Oak Tree out with a north wind. And then Coach Holder was a little intimidating for me because I loved them, and I'm actually, some of my best friends are some of those Okie State guys from that era. And anyway, I went on my visits, saw Buddy at LSU. But it turned out that Florida was the right place for me. It was 5 hours from home, so I could go home and see my dad, who was my swing coach, whenever whenever I needed to. And I just loved it. Lynn Blevins recruited me at Florida.
Yep.
And he was a good player in his own right. And I thought it was a good fit. I wasn't really looking for, I feel like coaching has evolved a little bit, probably a lot since then. Even though I was lucky that Lynn and Buddy were both good players and had a lot of good information to offer me. But I was kind of looking, I felt like I knew what I needed to do to keep getting better. And I had my father, who I trusted wholeheartedly. And it was, I obviously loved my time at Florida.
Well, you ended up in a good spot. I mean, if I can go through some statistics real quick, you obviously were the SEC Freshman of the Year. If I'm correct, you were an All-American 4 times. Is that right?
Yep.
That's pretty impressive. And you were on the NCAA National Championship runner-up team in 1990 with runner-up to Arizona State, Phil Mickelson's team. So At what point during that stretch did Buddy Alexander come from LSU to be your coach? And then we'll talk about Buddy a little bit.
Yeah, Buddy came in about halfway through my sophomore year, and I probably one of the luckiest guys on the planet. Nothing against Lynn Blevins, he was great. It just wasn't quite working. His style of coaching and some of the players we had, it was kind of got my freshman year just kind of got out of control. We had some kids failing out of school and had all kinds of crazy problems, and unfortunately Lynn had to pay the price for that, and Buddy came in, and to have a guy who, former USAM champion and that quality of a player, and having that background just gave him a lot of credibility when he said something, at least in my eyes it did. And I know most of my teammates, and Buddy was a huge influence on my college career and my pro career, and we're great friends to this day. I mean, I owe Buddy a lot.
I think Buddy, along with Mike Holder, and there's a few others, you could say are almost iconic coaches, meaning the impact they had not only on their team and their program, but college golf as a whole.
Yeah.
I talked to guys like Scott Verplank and Bob Tway and Willie Wood, guys that played for Mike Holder, and I realized it wasn't perfect all the time. Mike was a tough dude. Buddy was a tough dude. but
Yeah.
the impact they had on their career was just unbelievable. So what did Buddy give you as a player that you took with you all through that 20-year pro career?
So I was a really, really big time practicer. Like I was a range rat kind of kid, and probably to a fault. I tended to feel like I could really my whole career. I kind of struggled with this because I always felt like if I had 5, 6 hours to get work in, I could do more practicing than I could playing. And just mentally, it was always kind of one of those things. And I gained a lot of my confidence as a player from preparing the right way. I felt like if I prepared a certain way, when I went to a tournament, I could relax and just play and see how the chips fall, and it was just whether it's right or wrong. That's kind of how I was just wired. And Buddy actually really helped me a lot just from being a better player, being a smarter practicer, doing things more effectively. And really what he helped me a lot with was just game planning on golf courses, learning tendencies. What do I tend to do when the ball's below my feet, above my feet, when the pin's right, pin's left, wind's blowing this way, all those different things that are so important to a player being able to make better decisions when they're on the golf course. And was a really big routine guy, which I also took to a whole new level when I started working with Bob Rotella as a pro. And that stuff, it's the I call it little details at Florida, but it's the little details, in my opinion, that separate good college players from great college players, and guys, giving them an opportunity to maybe play at the next level if you can have really, really strong attention to those kind of details.
I watched that with Mike Holder. I was a high school coach, went to work for Mike as an assistant coach in 1997, and that's the things I was picking up on. The little things he would say and then just walk away. The
Yep.
little things he would say and then check on him the next day and see if they'd
Yep.
worked on it.
Yep.
Just old school, good, solid bits of wisdom, but things that Mike was a great player too. He was a three-time All-American,
Yep.
and he would pull those things into working with a player. And by the way, he had tons and tons of stories and remembrances of Scott Verplank shooting
Yeah.
in the 60s when nobody else could shoot break 75
Yeah.
on those cold days. He called
Yeah.
it 40-40. It's 40-mile-an-hour winds in the 40-degree temperatures.
Yeah.
Loved it. I
Yeah.
hated it. But
Yeah.
I mean, who likes that? But
I
anyway,
know.
so yeah, I can tell that Buddy obviously helped and had an impact on your career. I watched as he did that with a lot of other players, guys like Billy Horschel and later when I was coaching and Matt Every and some others. But what would you say also, would you say coaching philosophies, techniques, or tendencies that he kind of didn't meet, you didn't know you were going to be a coach at the time, but
Yeah.
what did you glean from that experience from him that you're using today?
I think part of it, and I probably this isn't kind of in my nature, but it's become a little bit more in my nature, is to kind of blend that hug with a fist kind of thing, not
Mm,
literally, obviously, but when to be brutally honest with somebody in your opinion, and say something that you think is true, to in what I've seen the best players in the world. I'm really lucky that I spent the better part of 30 years of my life around the best players on the planet, best coaches, and got to learn a lot and see how there are patterns that guys how they tend to do things that seem to work. And I just try to bring some of that Buddy, if guys aren't doing things the right way, or they're not preparing the right way, or they're not good enough at a certain facet of their game, I'm going to tell them, because I feel like I'm not doing my job, and I'm not doing them uh any service if I just pat them on the back all the time and say, oh, it's okay, just keep trying, you'll get better, and things like that. So sometimes you need to give them a little hug, and sometimes you need to kick them in the butt. And Buddy wasn't a big hugger. Okay. But so he did do a lot of that. And I was lucky because I had a hard, pretty old school dad who was pretty tough, and in a good way. My dad always told me when I got in my 20s and we became friends, and I'm doing my own thing, playing on the tour, and I got my own life. And I just asked him one day, I said, man, why were you so strict and hard on me when I was a kid? And it really stuck with me. And he just said, listen, it wasn't my job to be your friend. It was my job to make you a hardworking, productive person in society. And And that's kind of how I look at coaching. It's not my job to be their friend. I don't want to be their enemy by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, I don't think that's for me, it's not how I like to live. I'd like to enjoy my job and have fun, but I take the development and the work part of our jobs really, really serious, because that's, you know better than I do. You've been doing this forever, and you're one of the best coaches on the planet. That's where the differences are made. And so, I the only time I kind of really have gotten on guys is when they're not doing things the right way. And if you pull out a phone during practice, that's only happened a couple times, because they all know it ain't going to go over well, and they don't see that side of me hardly ever. So I think when I do get kind of mad, and I kind of just tell them it's BS to do stuff that way, I think it gets their attention even more. Buddy was way more intimidating, in a way. I don't. That's just kind of not how I want to be. But it worked really well for him, and we all respected him. I didn't really get in much trouble when I was in school, because I was kind of just a golf dork. I mean, we went out and had fun sometimes, but I don't know, I was lucky. I just knew when to do it and when not to do it.
Well, you mentioned that about Buddy, and I think Mike Holder taught me the value of confrontation,
Yeah.
how it can be used in a good way. But it's funny, you think about it. You hadn't thought about this probably very much, what you actually learned from Buddy that's made you a better coach.
Yeah.
And only thing I have over you in coaching, and this is it. You've been coaching for a few years, and I've been coaching for 38. That's all I've got. But
Yeah.
that's why I love having coaches on here. So it's like you're telling me some things already that I'm thinking and working through my head that I would like to use.
Yeah.
But Buddy anyway was iconic. You were very fortunate your paths crossed. He helped
Yeah.
you be a better player, certainly a better coach as well. So talk real quickly before we leave your college career. 1990 NCAA, I believe it was in Florida. Is that correct?
Yeah. I was at Innisbrook on the island
Innsbruck.
course. Yeah.
Yeah. You guys finished runner up to Phil Mickelson. That guy he was just working his way through college golf in about the best way possible
Yeah.
at
He
that
was.
time. But you guys
Yeah.
finished a couple shots back. Tell me about that week.
Yeah. That was probably still one of the moments that stings the most from definitely from my college career and my playing career in general. We were hosting down in Innisbrook. We had a really good team: Chris DeMarco and I, Pat Bates, Jeff Barlow, and so we were pretty loaded on those four guys, and we were in good position. And our back nine as a team was just not great, and I feel like we kind of handed them that, and not really handed it to them, but I mean they played well too. But if we just played average on that back nine, I feel like we would have won that tournament. And that's just how golf goes sometimes. But it was a tough pill to swallow. That being us hosting, having a ton of Gator fans there. That being Chris and my last college golf tournament at a school that I just love more than anything. And it was really, really emotional because of all that stuff. And there were a lot of tears. There were a lot of, it kind of gets me emotional to this day, because it hurt. And I'm at a school, the way I looked at it, that did so much for me, and that to be able to, selfishly, I wanted to win one for us too, but I wanted to win it for the school. And they're obviously hard to win. And, but it was an incredibly disappointing, moment that still, when I talk about it now, I still get kind of emotional about.
34 years, and here you are emotional about it. For one, it's not an individual thing. You're sharing
Yeah.
that with coaches and players and teammates, guys you're still friends with today.
Yep.
Pat Bates is a good friend of mine. Love that guy.
Yep.
The Bob Tway still talks about losing the national championship in 1981 and walking up the 72nd fairway with Mike Holder in tears because they weren't going to win the national championship. He said the 1978 and 1980 national championships team titles were as important to him as the 1986 PGA championship. That's how important it was to him. So I think people, unless you've played college golf, experienced it, coached it, have a hard time understanding why that's so important.
Yeah, I think doing something as a team is way, I mean, I know it is, because I just went, luckily I got to experience it, and it's way, way more gratifying, especially as a coach, than anything I did individually in golf. That SEC and national championship that we won, it literally was the best thing I've done in my golf career. And not that I had this unbelievable tour career. I mean, I think my best thing I can say about playing days is just that I didn't lose my job. It wasn't anything spectacular, but I was able to do it for a long time. But being able to, I might be jumping ahead a little bit here, but being able to share that moment with a group of guys, and it was pretty much the same team for 2 years. And be able to get them to buy into doing things a little bit differently. And better. There's always struggles and battles, and they're kids and they make mistakes and they do stuff that drives you crazy, and you get through it. And to be able to share that moment with them and look at those kids and understand that they're going to be tied together for the rest of their lives. They're going to be invited back to Florida and be honored on the field 40, 50 years from now. And I'm going to be probably dead and gone by then, but they'll be tied together forever. And to play a small role in that, as an assistant coach was honestly, and I'm not exaggerating, the highlight of my professional career.
So we're going to talk more about that. And I'm glad you said it the way you said it, because I want people, prospects that are listening to this, parents that are listening, as former players, current players, to think what we're doing is special. And you only get 4 years to do this. And once that's gone, you never get to do it again. So it's really, really important. But let's talk about your pro career. You played basically for 20 years or so.
Yep.
You never lost your card. You kept on playing. I think you were ranked 21st in the world at one point. You won the Honda Classic one year. You won the Canadian Open another year. That's pretty special in and of itself, because you got to play pro golf all of that time. Every 5 years, the tour turns over by 50%. Yeah. Now, that was a stat 10 years ago. I don't know if it still exists, but it's turnover. People are gone. They're here one day, they're gone the next. How were you able to sustain that? You're not a big guy. You don't overpower golf courses. You obviously had a system that worked for you. How'd you maintain pro golf for 20 years?
Well, I think it was a part of it was just really being good at identifying my weaknesses and addressing them. When I first got to school, like I said, I was a range rat, and I could hit balls for 3-4 hours at a clip, and I enjoyed it. And I legitimately felt like if I practiced enough, I wouldn't miss greens. And I know how crazy this sounds now to say this, but I literally said, well, the only time I'll have to chip is on par fives if I can't get on the green in 2. I literally thought that. And my freshman year of college, I realized, and I had a decent fall, but it wasn't what I wanted or what I liked. And I just started noticing that there were kids beating me that I felt like should not be beating me, even when I'm playing halfway decent. And golf, you're going to get beat by people who might not be as good as you. When you play bad, a lot of people can beat you, but this was different. And I saw guys that were beating me that were elite with their wedges and their putter, and I was maybe average, for college level. And I went home, and not like I didn't practice it, but I didn't put as much of an emphasis on it before that. And I said, man, I'm not going to get to the next level of college, because I was really just focused on making that next step and being a really good high level college player. And, we always had this long-term dream of playing PGA Tour, but I wasn't really focused on that at the time, because if I couldn't be a really good college player, I'm probably not going to be a PGA Tour player. So, and I really addressed that in the fall of after my freshman year, and went home, worked with my dad, buddy. We spent a lot of time working on the tempo and my stroke, things like that. So now my short game and my putting became a priority, not just something I would do at the end of a 3 or 4 hour range session and for 30 minutes, And so I changed how I practiced. To be honest with you, I started doing that stuff first, because I felt like that had to be the priority. And if you hit balls for 3 hours and you're tired, well, you're probably not going to get good quality practice in that part of your game. So I flipped how I would practice. And as far as after college and how I maintain on tour, I feel like my work ethic helped. Working with Bob Rotella was huge for me. I was always a bit of a hothead and really hard on myself. And I went and spent a weekend with Doc Rotella my rookie year on tour. My brother-in-law Mark Wood was friends with him, talked me into go up to Virginia. And I don't know that I would have kept my card my rookie year. And if you lose your card, how are you ever going to get it back? You just don't know. And I wasn't always good at implementing what Doc taught me over the course of my playing career, but when I did, it was a game changer for me. And unfortunately, kind of one of my biggest regrets as a player was not being better at that on a consistent basis. It was just kind of how, fighting how you're wired as a player. And I was a competitive, fiery guy. maybe that's from my hockey days. I don't know, but I had a hard time, kind of putting that aside on a consistent basis. But I think being able to keep my card, a big thing that I was pretty good at almost all the time was just not caring too much, if that makes sense. Like I think one of the bigger things a player can learn that can help them just increase their chances of performing well on a daily basis. Nothing obviously is going to guarantee that, is to care so much that you don't give a crap when you get on the first tee and you're just going to play. And it's not easy to do. But I won't say exactly what I would say in my head, but it started with an F, and I wouldn't say it out loud, but I just say F it all the time. And it was just a way that I would relax, and I would just say, okay, go through my routine, go through my process, and, trust that I'm going to hit some bad shots because you're a human being, but just keep doing that and not getting too worked up. When I didn't do that, when I didn't get too worked up about it, I usually played pretty good to really good. And it was just, if you don't care too much where you get bound up. And the other part is when you're playing well, you need to go. You need to put your foot on the gas and you got to go. And
Yeah.
some
When you've
players, I
got your
feel like,
game,
and some players sometimes get there and they're like, okay, I don't want to mess this up. And if you're 4 under through 7, you're like, you got to go. Not be stupid, I mean, it's not being dumb, but you got to get greedy and you got to get after it. And I think if you do that as a tour player, once you get your card, I mean, anybody that gets their card is pretty darn good, even for 1 year. But I think that's one of the things I think a lot of people that couldn't stay out there struggled with. Like, they make it too important. Like, man, I gotta be something that I'm not. I gotta try harder. I gotta work. If I'm even par through 6 holes, I'm out of the tournament already. You can't. You can't
so
get.
if you ever figure out how to get that, what you just told me for 5 minutes, through to a player's head, if automatically get it in his head, let me know, because that will
Yeah,
be fantastic. You'll be a
yeah.
coaching
It's not
genius.
easy, obviously. Yeah, I mean, I talk about the last thing I say after every meeting at night before the first round. Like, that's a big meeting for JC and I, is because we go over planning, and everybody sees golf differently. So it's not like we're telling guys how to play stuff, but we just want to, make sure they know the windows, the options that off the tee they can hit in, and all these different things, and where the pins are and all that jazz, that. But the last thing I say to them is we don't want to hit any shots being afraid.
Mm,
And if
I
you can
love it.
do that, which is hard again, but if you can limit the amount of shots, and it doesn't mean we're firing at every pin, not going to a back left pin with water left from 230. It's not saying that. Whatever your target is or your plan is, be committed, go through your routine and your process, and live with the results.
That's good coaching. That's
Yeah, the
good.
better we get at that, I just know for a fact it makes you a better player. I've been through it.
Absolutely. So we talked a little bit about your career, obviously how you were able to maintain that long of a stretch of keeping your card and playing well. In Did you play, or were you paired with Tiger Woods on even multiple occasions? And what was that like? Because he was playing pretty good golf in those days.
Yeah, I played with him probably 5 or 6 times in tournaments, and probably maybe 10 or 12 in practice rounds. Playing with him actually was pretty easy. The way I looked at it, at least, it was he was always great with me. We're not best friends by any stretch of the imagination, but he was, always very friendly. He didn't really, he couldn't really hang out with a lot of guys because he couldn't just go to Chili's, with me and have dinner. He'd get, during a tournament, it was hard for him to socialize a whole lot. But playing with him was actually very easy because obviously there was a gajillion people watching him, and it was a sea of people everywhere. So everything kind of blended in, and I never really got too worked up when I played with him because I was just too worried about what I was trying to do. And I knew how good he was. And I knew in my heart that if he played his best and I played his best, that it's gonna wear me out. But I was always pretty good about not worrying about whoever I was playing with or whatever. I was just trying to shoot the lowest score I could shoot.
Did you
And if
beat him
that
in
was
any
good,
single round? Did you ever get in one round?
yeah, I beat him in a few turns. I wouldn't be able to list them, but not very often. I mean,
Yeah.
if we played 800 rounds against each other, he's probably 780 to 20, maybe, in rounds. But he was impressive, and he didn't have many weaknesses. Maybe later on in his career, the driver got a little a little sideways with him probably after he left Butch. Really, I felt like he played his best golf with Butch, but the guy's mind. I think anybody that knows anything about golf and watched Tiger at all, or watch replays of him, it was not the physical stuff that he did. It was his mind, and which was always my heart. The thing I struggled with the most. Just being a perfectionist and not channeling that stuff the right way. But he was an impressive player, obviously, and that run he had for a while was, I don't know if
Mm.
it'll ever be matched.
I'm not sure in the modern day you could match it because there's just too many good players.
Yeah,
It might be a little tough to do. Maybe somebody will do it. Who knows?
yeah,
He did.
yep,
So you're toward the end of your playing career, you became the volunteer assistant for JC there
yep,
at Florida. So I know a volunteer assistant, you're still playing, you still got your career going and everything.
yep,
So I know that was a certain kind of coaching. Now you're associate head coach. You've been coaching full time since 21, September of
yep.
21. Uh, Describe how you've been able to take what you did as a player and work it into what you've done as a coach. You've already mentioned the SEC championship and the NCAA. We'll get back to that real quick, but why are you a better coach because of your playing background?
Um, well, I
Are
think
you,
I don't. Sorry.
or are you better because of your playing background?
Yeah, I think I am better because of my playing background, and I think and without sounding arrogant, it's not like I'm the only guy that knows this information, but I think part of it is when I say something, it gives me a little more credibility, whether I'm right or wrong, to be honest with you. And I think because I've done it at every level that these guys have done it or want to do it at, I think helps. I think honestly, what this is where it might sound arrogant. I don't mean to sound that way because I'm not like that. I'm just trying to help kids get better at golf. That's all I'm trying to do. And I feel like how I spent my life competing was exactly what college kids need to learn to get better at. So what I mean by that is they're all really talented. Like they go to Baylor, they go to Florida. These kids are studs. They're good players. They're not averaging 77 in high school tournaments. They're talented, gifted players. Most of the time that since I've been doing it, they don't know how to practice. Most of them don't know how to practice effectively. They definitely don't know. Very few of them know how to use their wedges properly. They're very one-dimensional, which is how it is. I don't mean that it's kind of it might sound like a knock on teachers, and it's not really because I come from a family of teachers. My sister and my brother-in-law are top 50 instructors. My dad was a club pro, taught a lot. But just when kids go get lessons, it seems like 99.9% of the time they're going in a bay and they're getting video and they're looking at their swing. They don't they don't do a lot of short game lessons. And they just don't know how to use the loft or the bounce or the clubs that they're using properly. And that's, to me, that's one of the lost arts in golf right now. I feel like with the equipment's changing and the ball doesn't curve quite as much. I mean, you can still curve it obviously, but it's gotten a little bit easier to become a proficient ball striker. It's still not easy, but it's gotten easier with all the technology and the equipment and everything. But then learning how to hit these different wedge shots, from whether it's middle distance, long distance, around the green, bunker shot, it's infinite. That it's just infinite amount of scenarios that you need to get better at. And that's kind of what I feel like I spent my life learning, right? Just learning how to hit these different shots, how to practice more effectively, how to manage your game on a golf course on good days, bad days, planning planning strategies on a course. Like I feel like a lot of our guys when they first get here kind of laugh at me because I feel like our practice round day is the most important day of the whole tournament. Because if you're not paying attention to what's going on, you've never seen this golf course, you're not going to be able to make right decisions. And one or two poor decisions in a round of golf can cost you and the team a tournament. And it's a lot of pressure to kind of look at it that way, but it's just I feel like the stuff that I've learned playing is what they're missing mostly, unfortunately I'm not a swing coach. Like, I'm smart enough to know that I didn't spend the last 30 years of my life teaching the golf swing. I know plenty about it and I can help guys, but I like the fact that almost all of our guys have their own swing coaches, and all JC and I want to know is okay, what are their tendencies? What are we working on? What do we need to keep an eye out for? If they get a little bit off, and hopefully if they don't have it when they get here, we make sure they have an understanding, and which my dad was great about me having an understanding on what my bad habits were. And when I got off, I had a checklist, and I checked those things first before I started trying to change anything. And most of it, I feel like with good players, when they get to a certain level, is most of the time they get off kilter. It's because they're doing wrong before they even move the club. They're in
Yes,
setup
before it's in
position.
the setup,
Yeah,
100%. It's in the
yeah,
setup. Great instructors to me touch as little of your golf swing as they possibly can to
yep,
affect the most change that they can. And
yes,
I think guys that want to put their stamp on a player, it's dangerous sometimes, but that's the instruction part of it.
yep,
The fact that kids can glean information that took you 30, 40 years to get, and they've got it's a classroom that they're in with you.
yep,
And there's a lot of players. I really think that's great. I think young coaches need to understand you don't need to be their swing coach. You
yep,
need to be a life coach, teach them how to manage their way around a golf course, teach them those things for sure.
yep,
So you guys, and I'm gonna ask you in a minute for a memory from that NCAA championship in 23. But in August of 23, they announced you were the Jan Strickland Award winner as the assistant coach of the year.
yep.
A lot of times that goes to the assistant coach of the national champions, not always, but a lot of times. And I felt like I watched you coach that year. I watched it, and it was like, he kind of has a good feel for this. I think he knows what he's doing. And so I texted you and told you congratulations. You said, thanks so much, coach. Really means a lot. You'd send the text. To be honest, I feel a little guilty about winning this award. I've only been doing this for a couple of years, and I still kind of feel like I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I'm pretty comfortable at the back of the range and on the course, but I have tons to learn. I've learned it's nice to have great players. They make you look smart. Okay, so you were being very humble. You had done a great job, but you obviously were trying to learn coaching. It's another year later, a little over a year later. Are you starting to pick up on some of those things you felt you were weak on?
Yeah, most of the stuff that I feel like that I needed to get better at was learning how to communicate differently with different players. They all need to hear the message a little bit differently sometimes, and getting better at identifying that. I am supremely confident in my golf knowledge. Okay, I don't pretend that I know everything, but I feel like I'm very confident in the stuff that we do on the course and how we're doing things in practice. I feel like we have a really, really good formula. It's just addressing things that you have to be good at to be a great player, in my opinion, and JC's opinion. And I'm very confident in that. It's more the stuff off the course and the stuff that I don't like, and sitting in my office, which I hope I didn't even have an office, and I wish I didn't have to do any of this administrative stuff. But every job has things you got to do that you don't necessarily love about it. Even PGA Tour players have to do things they don't like, and it's part of the deal. But I feel like I have gotten better. I've gotten better at about holding guys accountable. You know, I really try hard not to be the bad guy and be the jerk and ride the guys, because I feel like, well, listen, man, if you don't want to get better, I can't want it for you. And I got a little bit better this semester about holding guys accountable to doing, because I preach routines and in practice plans and things like that a lot. And I kind of had been leaving it up to guys to come to me, waiting for them to do it. And they just don't for some reason. And I just think, and maybe they just don't believe in the value until they understand what it does for you when you're in a pressure situation. So we've been hammering on guys, JC and I, this fall, in going through detailed routines, like how many steps. They think we're crazy, but it's like how are you going to step into a ball? Because I want it the same amount of steps, the same foot starts, the same everything, and same time. We identify what they want their routine. It has to be their routine. It can't be my routine. Everything's a little bit is very individual, but and then we start timing them. So, it takes the same amount of time, because it's one of those small detail things that, that it's not a small detail, and but it's something we need to get better at. So I've gotten better at kind of force feeding things to guys. I've kind of always wanted them to want it, and they do want it. I mean, we got a great group of kids that just work their butts off, and they play and they practice all the time. They love being together. but sometimes they don't know what they don't know until you kind of shove it down their throat a little bit. And they all say they have a routine until we start going through that process. And then I'm like, well, that's not a routine. I'm like, you're not, if you look once sometimes and you look twice and other times, or if you look before the waggle or after the waggle, you have to do it the same. So, it sounds really OCD, but it's what great players do. I mean, Tiger
Well,
Woods, you can find videos on him, and
it's
the
unbelievable.
timing of his routine was uncanny, was
The
unbelievable.
millisecond, down to the
Yes.
millisecond. And
Yeah.
I've always likened it to a pre-shot routine of a great free throw shooter. He's never changing it. It's always the same, and that's why he's a great free throw
Yeah.
shooter.
Watch Steph Curry. He
Oh,
doesn't
for
go in
sure.
practice and just rip him out of a rack and shoot him when he's shooting free throws. He does not do that.
Nope, he does not.
Yeah.
You're right. Well, okay, so it's good to see you're already learning and you're aware that you have more to learn, which is
Yeah.
great. What makes JC a great coach? I think he's a fantastic coach. I recruited him out of high school when I was an assistant coach, didn't get him, have been mentoring him, talking to him, being a friend of his for years. I love his success, but what
Yeah.
makes him successful?
A lot. I mean, he's first and foremost, he's one of the most genuine people I've ever met in my life. Typical Canadian guy. He'll give you the shirt off his back. He loves our guys more than you could ever imagine. And his work ethic is second to none. I mean, I feel like I work pretty hard. I'm here a lot. And that guy with 3 little kids is he's nonstop going all the time. He's a great recruiter, great communicator, super passionate about the Florida Gators and making his guys better. And that is just kind of scratches the surface. I know I'm pumping his tires, and we always joke and give each other a hard time and try to not make each other feel too good about. So I hope he doesn't listen to this. But anyway, he's taught me so much about how to communicate with, whether it's recruits, players, managing schedules. Because I spent the bulk of my life just worrying about myself, and now we're worrying about 10 kids and 9 kids this year, and how to manage all that stuff, and how to communicate properly with the guys. And he's turned into being one of my best friends on the planet. We're super tight, and I feel like we complement each other really well. Not that he doesn't know the golf. He's a great player and won Florida Open a couple times, but I was more of a routine and practice plan guy. And I think he and I blend really well, because he has that same belief that, he came from UNLV, and that program, it was like, well, they didn't really practice together very often, I guess. And coach wanted people to reach out to players, to reach out to them for help, and not the other way around. I think being a volunteer assistant for a few years before I started, I got a little bit of a glimpse on what the overall work ethic was. When you leave kids, college kids, I kind of told them, because I just don't feel like you can rely on college kids, college golfers, to first of all know what to do, and then second, trust them to do it enough when they have all these distractions. Some will, some won't. But I said I've kind of felt like it was our job to kind of point them in the right direction and try to shorten that learning curve. So I have to give him a lot of credit, because he had some strong beliefs in how he thought things should be done, and I kind of expressed my beliefs, and he was open enough to try something different. And I don't think a lot of coaches, from a guy who's never coached college golf, he's listening to me, who's never done it before. That takes a lot of nerve and a lot of trust, I think. And I think now he kind of saw some of the benefits, and maybe I got lucky with that thought process. But it's helped our guys a lot. And you're always looking to get better, but we can see quantifiable improvements with almost every player we have. If they're willing to do the work. Again, we can't do that extra stuff. We only get 20 hours a week, and 20 hours and trying to be a PGA Tour player and a high level college player, 20 hours a week is not enough. It's not even
It's not
remotely enough.
enough. Well, I'm
No.
glad to hear those things about JC. I feel like they're true. He's been on this podcast before, and he and I always connect, and we connect well. And I love the way he does coaching, and it doesn't surprise me that you would be enjoying it as much as you are. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
all right, best memory from the 2023 NCAA championship team. Something that stands out. You're going to remember when you're a little old man in a nursing home, when he's back, he's visiting you. What's this greatest memory you've got?
Well, there might be two of them. One would probably be the hugs, and the tears on the 18th green right after we won. I mean, just me and JC especially together. Each of us telling, I'm not a guy that verbally expresses, I love you kind of things a lot. And there was a lot of that going on, and how happy he and I were and how happy we were for the guys. But there's a cool story, selfish part of it that just kind of made JC and I believe that we were doing the right stuff. I was on that final match. I was walking with Fred Biondi in the second last group, and JC was behind me with Ricky, and John Dubois was on 18 green, and he had to 2-putt from 30 feet or so, downhill, breaking maybe a foot, not crazy hard, but under the circumstances, probably one of the most nervy scenarios he's been in his life. And he lagged it down there for a gimme, and he kind of afterwards on the green, we hugged and we were doing our thing, and he goes, "You won't believe what I was thinking over that putt." And I thought he was going to say something, like negative, like don't putt it in the water, or don't 3-putt. Like, I was just thinking maybe it was something funny. And JC and I had come up with this speed putting drill that we do with the team. And just because it was a huge issue when I got to Florida, it's a huge issue in junior golf. Like it, and my dad always told me one of the biggest strengths you can have as a player is feeling like you can hit it on a green, anywhere on a green, and 2-putt from anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of my strengths. Is not that it was all the time, obviously nobody is, but we did this drill. I set it up every day, every morning in the postseason, and I just told guys, do it at some point during the day. Try to just go do it. And it's not any rocket science drill, but it was just training speed control. And it could be done in 5 minutes. It could be done in an hour. Sometimes you had to complete this drill and to put some heat on them. And he said, we've been doing that drill every day for almost a month. I said, I knew I was going to hit it the right speed. And it was just one of those things where you get confirmation. That's why we all as coaches try to come up with drills to make them better, but also to make them trust their training when they get in the highest pressure situation they'll have in their lives. And the fact that he said that to JC and I, and we just looked at each other and like, maybe we just got lucky with the drill, but that it was a really gratifying moment as a coach, just knowing that something we designed that we had them do religiously actually helped them when they needed it the most. And that part selfishly, but the memories and the hugs and the I love yous and the connection we're going to have obviously is probably the number one memory for sure.
Yeah, it's not the fact that you guys all have a trophy together and have a ring together. It's everything you put into it together as players and coaches.
Yep.
And it culminated in a championship, which is really hard to do. I don't think you may never get to do it again. That's the crazy part about these. And you're going to do a great job, and you're going to get better as a coach. You're going to get great players, but it may never happen again.
Yeah,
it's
a lot of things have to fall into place. I mean, we beat Florida State, and I don't know how I still to this day, JC, and I don't know how we won that match. And that's just how golf is. Sometimes you get the right break, and you win a tournament, or you don't get the right break and you don't win a tournament. And the chips fell in our favor. I do believe that if you do things the right way over and over again, it increases your chances for that stuff to happen. But it's, listen, I won twice in 30 years of pro golf. That's not very many times. So I know how hard it is. And it's even harder in the team sport because you got to get more guys going.
You do. Well, listen, I got to tell you, this has been a pleasure for me to hear your perspective, Dudley. You are a great young coach. Now, I'm saying a great young coach because you haven't been doing it very long.
Yeah.
But I just think you ought to do this as long as you can. You're great at it. You're great for our profession. I'm watching. I'm paying attention. Keep up the good work. And thanks again for joining me today.
Well, thanks for the kind words. I appreciate you lying for me, but I'm loving what I'm doing. I'm very fortunate. JC took a chance on somebody who's never done it before, and to try to be able to give back a little bit to a school that did so much for me means the world to me.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, thanks again. Hope to see you some point in the spring. We're not going to see you the rest of the fall, but definitely see you in the spring. Best of luck with everything.
Thanks. Same to you. Good luck. Take care.
You bet.